Is the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G worth buying in 2023? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, and this is the Galaxy A13 5G. Now this phone was originally launched in December of 2021, so at this point, it has been over a year since this phone was released. And the purpose of this video is to kind of look back on the phone just to see if it's still worth getting, especially considering that we've had quite a few other devices launched since then, and the budget smartphone space is more competitive now than ever before. Now, since being launched, the A13 5G has been very successful for Samsung. And it definitely makes sense why, because despite this device being relatively low end, especially compared to a lot of other Android smartphones out there, you're still getting a lot here for the money. In addition to that, since being launched, Samsung has offered this phone with a lot of really generous discounts, and over at the carriers, things are even better. From what I can recall, I remember the carriers all throughout 2022 offering this phone for free if you're switching in from another carrier, and if you're sticking with that carrier, they were still offering this phone with really generous discounts in exchange for being a loyal customer. So combining that with the fact that it's already a really solid lower end Android handset, definitely doesn't surprise me that it was so successful. Now here is the box that the Galaxy A13 5G does come in, and as you can see, it is a pretty small and slim box. And one of the reasons for that is because there is no USB wall adapter included. We do, however, have a SIM card removal tool, a quick start guide for the device, and a double-sided USB-C cable in the box. Now with this device, we are getting a very large 6.5-inch display. Now this display does feature a 90 Hz refresh rate, which means that things move a little bit smoother here compared to a phone that has a 60 Hz refresh rate. So that is a nice premium touch, and I remember when this phone was originally launched, when I heard that it had a 90 Hz refresh rate, I was definitely very surprised. But I think it's definitely a great move on Samsung's part, and it really does make this phone feel a bit more expensive and higher end and premium than it really is. Now unfortunately, the display on this device is 720p. That being said though, Samsung did make the best given that limitation. So overall, things do look pretty crisp and clear with the display on this device. And definitely if someone told me that this was 1080p, I might believe them just because Samsung did do a great job with this display. Now the PPI with this phone is 270. We're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, and we're getting an 81.1% screen to body ratio. Now, the overall design of this phone isn't anything overly interesting. We have a thicker bottom bezel, we also have a water drop notch up top here, and this general design has been repeated many times by both Samsung and a lot of their competition as well. I can recall the predecessor phone to this device, the Galaxy A12, also had pretty much the same exact design. So I suppose Samsung figures that there's no point in completely redesigning these devices every year, considering that most people in this segment just want a good, reliable, functional smartphone. So thankfully, at least when it comes to that, the A13 5G does deliver really well. But having a large display on a smartphone is definitely a great thing for a variety of different reasons. Now, the main reason definitely has to be that everything is just a lot bigger. So, for example, text is larger and easier to read. If you want to watch a video on this phone, you're going to get a much better and more immersive experience compared to a device that might have a smaller display in comparison. So for me at least, I don't see any downsides with having a large display in a smartphone, and especially for this device because even despite it having a large display, it is still very pocketable. Now the front camera on this device is 5 megapixels, and I definitely recommend taking a look at my full review video of the A13 5G that I uploaded on my channel a while ago, as you'll see a variety of different photo and video samples from all the various cameras on this device. Now with this phone, we are getting 64 gigabytes of internal storage, along with microSD card expansion. So already, having 64 gigs with a lower end phone like this one is really a nice thing to have. That will get you pretty far, but if you do find yourself filling up that storage with photos and videos, for example, then at least you do have the option of adding in a microSD card to offload that content. And then by doing that, you'll free up some space on the phone itself. Now there is no wireless charging with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, but this device does feature a fingerprint sensor on the power button. So let's give that a try. It's very fast and accurate. Let's try that one more time. So it definitely works really well. And in addition to having the fingerprint sensor, this phone also features face unlock, so I do appreciate that we do have multiple methods for accessing the phone. Now with the Galaxy A13 5G, we do have a triple camera setup on the back of the phone. We have a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera for close-up images, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. So this phone does support portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras, and in addition to that, this device does support 1080p video recording with both the rear and front cameras as well. So here's how things look on the camera app on the device. This is with the main rear camera right now. Then from here, we can go over to the More tab and access the macro camera, where we can get very close up and have things be in really good detail. We can then head out of there and go over to portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. I also appreciate that we do have the option here for adjusting the level of blur. That's a nice customization. We can then flip around to the front-facing camera and take portrait selfies, and then we can also go and take standard selfies as well. So there is unfortunately no ultra-wide-angle camera with the Galaxy A13 5G, but on the other hand, that doesn't surprise me too much since this is a lower-end device. Now, if you do want a phone that's similar to this one that does have an ultra-wide camera from Samsung, then you might want to look into the Galaxy A23 5G, which is one tier higher than this phone. But in general, I'm pretty happy with the various cameras and photo taking abilities of this device. Honestly, in this segment, you really can't ask for too much when it comes to camera quality, but at the same time, with this phone, it definitely can take good enough photos and videos that they're worth sharing on social media, putting in a photo album, all those various things. So you can definitely take good, usable images with this device. Now with this phone, we have 4 gigabytes of RAM paired up with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 5G processor. Now, as the name of the processor implies, and the name of the phone as well, this phone is compatible with 5G networks. Now, in early 2023, can you get by without 5G? Yeah, I definitely think you can, but at the same time, if you're going to go through all the trouble of buying a brand new smartphone, you may as well get one that does work with your carrier's latest and greatest network. So I think that's definitely worth keeping in mind there. Now, as far as the performance goes from the actual processor itself, and with that RAM configuration, things do run pretty smoothly here. I will say though, don't expect this phone to do too much beyond the bare minimum. If you want to use this device for phone calls, text messages, light social media usage, occasional video viewing, and maybe some light gaming as well, it will get the job done. But if you are someone who's constantly on your smartphone all throughout the day, which, not necessarily anything wrong with that. Many of us are on our phones quite a bit, but I could definitely see you being frustrated with this device not being fast enough if you are using it that often. But again, if you're just looking for a relatively basic, lower-end Android smartphone that's still reliable and still has the quality that Samsung tends to provide to all their various devices, then I do think you'll be happy with the amount of performance that we're getting here with the A13 5G. Now with this phone, we have a very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery, and with that, you should definitely expect to get very good battery life. Easily a day, if not 2 days of usage from this phone, and in addition to that, this device does support 15-watt fast charging, so you will be able to recharge that large battery relatively quickly. And that's certainly a good thing because at 5,000 milliamp hours, if you were to recharge it at like a 5-watt rate, for example, it would definitely charge pretty slowly. So if you have this phone already or if you're looking to get it, I definitely recommend getting a hold of a 15-watt fast charger so that you can actually get the maximum wattage of charging speed with this device, because if you do pair it up with a 5-watt charger, I can definitely see some potential frustrations just because you'll have to wait forever for this phone to recharge. Now this device does feature NFC, so if you do like to make mobile contactless payments using services such as Samsung Pay, then here you go. This phone will get the job done for that, which is a great thing. I'm definitely a big fan of NFC. I prefer to use that method to make payments anytime that I'm able to, so any phone that does have it is certainly a good thing to me. But now that we've gone over a variety of the various specifications and features of the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, let's now take a closer look at the hardware itself. Now, the phone is made completely of plastic, besides the display, which is glass, but that is to be expected in this budget segment. Another thing too is that the overall design of this phone, like I kind of mentioned earlier in the video, but you can see on the back of the phone it's the same situation. It's relatively boring. I wouldn't call this phone necessarily that innovative when it comes to its design, but at the same time, this phone is meant to be a practical device and nothing more, nothing less. So I suppose when it comes to that, it's totally adequate. However, I would recommend pairing up the phone with some sort of case, just so that the plastic doesn't get really scratched up. Now taking a look at the left side of the device, we just have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of the phone, we have volume up, volume down, and then also the fingerprint sensor, which doubles as the power button. Then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the device, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and we have the speaker. So this phone does indeed have a 3.5mm headphone jack. So if you do have traditional wired headphones, then just know that you can indeed use them here with this phone. And while I know that many people are switching over to using mostly Bluetooth headphones and Bluetooth speakers, I know there's still a lot of people out there that do prefer to use wired headphones for one reason or another. And it's certainly becoming more and more difficult to find Android devices that actually have a headphone jack. Now, if you remember a long time ago, Apple was the first company to get rid of the headphone jack, starting with the iPhone 7. And then over time, more and more companies have continued to do the same. So let's hope that Samsung at least continues to offer some phones in the A series as time goes on with headphone jacks, but I can't say I'm too confident that that's actually going to happen. And then on the back of the device, it's not too eventful. We just have that triple camera setup with the flash and Samsung logo. And I do appreciate though that the material on the back of the phone is not a glossy finish, as it doesn't really pick up too many fingerprints. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, I wouldn't call this design anything too special. But this concludes my video on the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G in 2023. Overall, I do think this phone is still a great option. Another great thing too is that Samsung does tend to provide their A-series phones with quite a few Android updates as time goes on. So without a doubt, this phone definitely will be getting Android 13, 14, and maybe 15 possibly, I hope so. But just know that they have some of the best software support out right now for Android devices, and combining that with the fact that this phone does have quite a bit to offer really does still make it a great option. I suppose really the only factor worth considering is if there's other devices that are more capable than this one that are offered at a lower rate. Whether that's due to the base price being more competitive than what this phone's being offered at, or if maybe it's because whatever phone's competing against this phone that's better is offered with some sort of really generous promotion or deal. It really depends on what's available at the time that you're watching this video, but just know that if you do end up choosing the A13 5G, I think you will be happy with your purchase. But this concludes my video on the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G in 2023. I hope you liked it. Definitely give the video a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.